So I was thinking the other day, it's about time that we bring on some fresh faces, some new voices, some fresh meat, if you will, onto the podcast. And with that, we have presumably the next candidate in the Patriots de facto GM search. But you, in the meantime, can find him on NBC Sports Boston and occasionally at 98.5 The Sports Hub. Cerrone Battle, I've been looking forward to this a long time. Thank you for coming on, my guy.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
So if you've seen Cerrone on TV, or I don't know if 98.5 does any video component when you do their shows, I'm going to describe this in a way that's going to make everyone uncomfortable. It looks like you're in a producer's wet dream because you're surrounded by soundproof paneling where people who complain about my sound quality don't know I bought these very cheap Amazon squares to offset some of the echo in my office here. You, sir, sound like you could be in God's office or producer room. Like you got the pro mic ready on, you got the headset. I have none of this. I'm very jealous, and anyone producing me surely is going, please have Cerrone on more before he's even said another word.
Look, man, it's the same setting, man. I got the same cheap soundproofing around, and I got my cheap mic here, my cheap headphones. It's aesthetic, but I guess it works. It comes off good, but I mean, you'd be shocked if I told you where I really was.
Well, I asked you that just now off air because I know, one of the last times I saw you on NBC was around North Carolina's Pro Day, and you live in the Raleigh area, so you got to see Drake May more than any of us really have in person, and kind of, tipped everyone off. Hey, Gerard's got these like googly eyes. Elliot is staring at him the way that you would across the bar from a woman that you want to go up to and talk to, but don't have the right line yet. Did you see this coming? Can I just ask you that off the top, Drake May, number 3?
No, I mean, I didn't see it coming no more than anybody else did. My whole thing was the reason I went over there I wanted to see for myself was I wanted to see, not want to say what all the hype was about, the arm talent and all that stuff, how they say it blow you away if you see it. So, all right, well, let me go see. And when I went, it was very impressive. But the thing I took away from the whole experience was watching the reactions of the teams, the other coaching staff. Washington had all their staff there. The Patriots were there, and a bunch of other teams were scattered around. And I somehow, some way ended up standing next to those guys like I was a part of it. And I didn't say anything, so I just let it slide. No one made me move. So I got to see their reactions up close and personal. And they were high-fiving and shaking their head like, wow, this is impressive. And then, sure enough, there's Elliot Wolf creeping up to get a closer look. And at that point there, I said, you know what? They really like this kid. Now, I mean, I didn't see what they did with other pro days or how they treated other players, but I can clearly tell they were impressed by him and were getting a closer look as they possibly could. But also, so were other teams. Everybody else was blown away by him. And that's the biggest point I made coming out of that was, even if it's not May, if you want one of these quarterbacks, you better get one and get them early because they're going to fly off the board. And sure enough, as the draft day comes, they're all gone by the time you got to 12. And right. I think we all understand the importance of a quarterback, but everybody wants the young, fresh face. And all those teams are fighting for their guy. But my biggest thing was I'm glad the Patriots, they saw their guy. If he's the right guy or not, we don't know. But they believe in him. They saw their guy, and they stayed at 3, and they picked him. And so I got to give him credit for that.
For sure. People on this podcast or who've listened to me anywhere know how I feel about Drake May, who's going to come up later in this episode because we are running down today the best and worst of the Patriots offseason. Time has slowed down a little bit. The NFL schedule is not being released until next week. We had Drake May week at the Herald. I don't know how many people care, but we have fresh stories for you because we have the time and space to bring you everything we know about Drake May. So when we run down the best and worst, we will have the 4 best moves in your opinion and in my opinion, and then the 3 worst moves of the Patriots offseason. But if we were just to do an episode about the news of the week, which again, I just said there's not a whole lot going on, it would be the ongoing de facto GM search, because we can just never have anything simple or easy here in New England. Bill doesn't want to do titles. The Crafts don't want to go with the GM. I would love just to tell you it's a GM search. It is not. Anyway, it's for a primary position for which the NFL has certain hiring practices the Patriots are trying to fulfill. It's for their personnel job, de facto GM. And today it was reported that they have a second candidate who has accepted an interview. And this is Samir Suleiman, who's from the Panthers. He follows Brandon Hunt, who's director of scouting for the Eagles. And I will just cut straight to it because this is something referred to by Tommy Kern, I've worked with at NBC Sports Boston, that this is largely going to be a dog and pony show. And it's unfortunate on a lot of levels. I don't want to jump totally into the Rooney Rule.
Yeah.
I think I've tipped my hand about how I feel about this already, but just your immediate take on what is currently the news of the day is the Patriots, quote unquote, search for their new quote unquote GM.
I mean, it's kind of sad that, I'm gonna say sad, but if they already know they have their guys in place, bringing guys in for interviews and stuff, knowing that they're not going to possibly get it, that stinks. I mean, even for the head coaching positions and stuff like that around the league, I would hate to just be a guy you bring in just for the sake of bringing you in.
Right.
But I mean, it's interesting. I saw your article this morning, and I just kind of, I'm gonna shake my head about it like that. Like you said, can't get anything easy, nothing smooth. It's always something crazy. But I hope Wolf is going to be the guy, and the guy that that has the vision, and they follow. He was there for the draft process, free agency, and I would hate for whoever's already there, who's been doing the work, to get bumped out for somebody else coming in, or the guy on the other end coming to get the interview, knowing that they already got their people in place, and they're just bringing you in for the sake of bringing you in to make it look good. I mean, that's kind of tough, but I hope they don't really make any changes really right now, except unless they're filling something that wasn't already there. But I don't want to see them make any changes now after you basically put your roster together on what you're going to go with going into the summer.
Right. And a couple of things on this. The search started not with interviews, but with no thank yous, which you had 3 reported candidates, 2 of which I can tell you off the top of my head. Trey Brown with the Bengals, who we knew before Elliott Wolf was even promoted, had a connection to Gerard Mayo, experience in the league, comes from a front office that as of late has done some pretty good business, as well as Quentin Harris, who is a VP with the Cardinals, had 3 GM interviews, got released from Arizona, I think last week or earlier this week, and just said no thank you. And so these are candidates who would have fulfilled the requirement of the Rooney Rule. 2 external minority and or female candidates have to come in person, interview for the job. They just said, why would I waste my time when Elliott Wolf? Right. Presumably, right. I'm not in there. I haven't spoken to them, but like you just talked about, for a job. And so the disappointment for me, the embarrassment for me is not only, hey, we have this job, why don't you come in? And I got a text yesterday from an executive that I've gotten a little closer with over the last couple of years, which said, this Patriots search, and a crying laughing emoji as the third denial came in. It said they could have just done this on the front end. Like ultimately, Cerrone, I think this is an optics issue. It's not a material consequence for the football department. And there might even be an upside. But am I wrong on that? That it's just kind of like a superficial, you take the hit now, you have to do it, but in a couple of days, this will be over with?
I hope so. I mean, for their sake, the good thing about it here in the New England area is you have other things distracting people from this right now. You got the Celtics and the Bruins and all this stuff going on. It's a good way to kind of sneak in anything you want to do right now. But I mean, hopefully it will blow over. But I mean, it's kind of an embarrassing thing to do. And I completely understand why the other guys have said, you know what, I'm not going up there for that. I'm not doing this. And they could have done it a better way. But I just think it's I wouldn't say completely bad look. It's just, it's just real unattractive right now. And I think they could have did things a better way.
Yeah, last couple of things we'll wrap on this because, again, you and I both expect Elliott Wolf will keep the job that he has been holding right now, roster control. The reason they have to fulfill the Rooney Rule now and didn't earlier is because technically Elliott's role did not change. And the Patriots did not list with the NFL, okay, who's your primary personnel leader, your designation for this job, which used to be Bill Belichick. Bill leaves. They don't fill it with one person. It was all collaboration. I don't know if you've heard that word yet before this offseason. It's very collaborative in Foxborough. But everyone inside the league that I've talked to, people within the team, expect Elliott to get the job. And I will just, discount by saying this, not to mention that there are these interviews today with Brandon Hunt and Samir Suleiman, not even in Gillette Stadium. They're just meeting with Patriots brass in Boston and then washing their hands, and it seems like that's going to count. Is that if you did the blind test, not only just a guy who's had your roster control, got to pick the quarterback of the future, spend $124 million guaranteed in free agency, but has spent 20 years in an NFL front office, including as an assistant GM and interviewed for GM jobs elsewhere, you kind of have your guy, no?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, you like you mentioned, you gave this man the power to do all this stuff. He's the one at the pro days looking at the QB like, that's the guy we should get. If you don't trust him in that position, then you did something terribly wrong. I mean, it's just it'd be, you talk about a bad look. But I think they have to know that he's their guy. I think they knew he was their guy from the beginning, but they're just following the league rules right now and doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it's weird. I mean, I know they're forced to kind of do it, but I think it comes off as a bad look. But I hope Wolf is their guy, and I would be completely stunned if they come out and hire somebody else and he's out of the building. That would be, you talk about a story.
Can you imagine, right? Like, we're all ready to wash our hands too of just the offseason, all the changes, get used to normal. I'm going to go to OTA practices, write up way too many words about Drake May's completion percentage and the routes Javon Baker's running. It's like, oh, there goes Samir Suleiman, new Patriots GM, because why not? This dude who's really, for background, only dealt with contracts. Granted, he's done it for 20, 25 years in the league. It's an impressive resume. But like their other searches, we should know, again, finally, before we move on. They could be interviewing Brandon Hunt, director of scouting with the Eagles, who came up on the pro side, and Samir Suleiman for jobs that will be underneath Elliott Wolf in the way that they did Adrian Clem to be their offensive line coach when Belichick hired Bill O'Brien. And I know the Patriots and their defensive coordinator search, when they kind of knew DeMarcus Covington was getting the job, said like, "Hey, why don't you come over for an interview? Maybe you'll be our defensive backs coach, inside linebackers coach." It didn't work out, but that was definitely part of the process. Okay, speaking of Elliott Wolf, his first offseason, I've given it a B, a solid B. I did the same with the draft. Your grade for his first offseason is what?
I agree with you. I'll go with a solid B. I mean, only reason I wouldn't go with some with the A pluses is because we haven't seen the guys play yet. But I think they tried their best to fill their needs. I mean, trying to get, Calvin Ridley or some of these other receivers to come in, you knew that was going to be a challenge in the beginning, because people didn't really know what they were dealing with. I mean, they didn't even have a quarterback at the time. So I understand that. But as far as the draft and stuff like that, you get your quarterback in the future. You went offense heavy. You went with your offensive line. You went and got receivers. You didn't get the receiver profile that the fans want. We want a guy that everybody wants. I want him to draft 4 guys that run a 4.2 40 and have a 50-inch vertical leap. It's like, you actually have to draft guys that can play football. We see Taekwon over there with all the speed in the world, struggling on the football part of it, but he has all the athletic ability. But they've gone out, they went and got receivers. Polk, I like Polk. I've seen enough of Penix to where I've seen Polk play enough football. I haven't seen all these other guys play, but to them, they went and they filled their needs, offense heavy. They re-signed their key guys on the defensive side of the ball, signing a Winu as one of your right tackle, go wherever you're going to put him, but keeping him around, keeping some of your defensive players around. Some of the smaller moves they made with Osborne and stuff like that, I got to give them credit for trying to address their needs. Now, will they work and pan out? Time will tell. But I think they did the best they could with the situation that they were dealt with coming in of what happened after last season.
And I think that's the key point, right? Like, what is the context here? What are you working with? What is the ultimate ceiling here? If you're the Chiefs, obviously you can go out and get Marquise Brown on a discount deal. The Patriots slide that offer across the table. He's crumpling it up and throwing it back in your face. So we need to understand this is not to excuse the Patriots. It's just to be in touch with your own reality as a media member, as a fan, as someone in that front office. Like, again, these candidates who turn the Patriots down for the GM search understand the context of what that job is. It's not going to them. Why waste their time? So for us, I think when you hear B, if you're someone who goes, oh my God, they didn't get a number 1 receiver, you still don't have a left tackle, how are you guys going so easy on Elliott Wolf? First of all, we'll get to that. That's the 3 worst moves. But in totality of what they did, retaining the talent available to them and getting the talent outside that realistically would have come here, not to mention the draft, solid B. This is a double into the gap. You know it off the bat. It's not going over the fences. But you and I don't know about your baseball playing career or what a Red Sox have right now. I would have taken a double at every step of my baseball career.
You better believe it.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, I mean, look, like I said, time will tell with these guys, but I give them credit for staying where they were in the draft at 3. I know teams wanted to move up. And some of the reports, some outside reports, you believe one thing or the other. They stayed there. They got their guy. They believed in that guy. And then they went out and got him young receivers for him to work with. And then they went and addressed I wouldn't say the backup quarterback position, but bringing in another quarterback in the draft. I don't know if to create competition or whatever it may be. But they went and they tried to address needs, even getting a tight end later in the draft, a younger tight end to go with the guys they have now. I mean, is he a full tight end? Time will tell. But they tried to address that need even later in the draft. So for right now, I have to give them I have to give them that B. I have to give them credit for that. On a simple fact alone, training camp is going to be lit this year. I don't know.
Yes, thank you.
It's for that alone. It's like, okay, we got a real receiver competition now in training camp. we're going to be watching every little thing they do. I was out there and I met you guys for the first time. We're out there watching Juju look slow. We're watching, Parker not be able to catch those fade routes in the back of the end zone over and over again. And then the stink stunk thing comes out. Everybody kind of like, well, yeah, that's what I saw. But now with these young receivers coming in, with Osborne, with Douglas coming back now you're going to, with Drake May throwing them the ball, now we're going to be looking at this totally different, in a different perspective, in a different light. So I think they kind of did their job, and I'll give them a B on this draft and offseason.
So the reason I burst out laughing there for a second about your point in training camp is because it's the first thing that comes to mind when I think ahead about this team. And it really means nothing to anyone else who's not going to be sitting there on the hill in the media tent or going faithfully like someone who might go to church every day to every single day of training camp, because it doesn't matter wins and losses, right? That Joe Milton can throw the ball 80 yards and you have Javon Baker who's going to be saying insane things every time they let him talk to media in practice. But it matters to me, Cerrone, because I will be there at church every day. I will be on the hill. I will be taking notes. And if we've learned anything from watching the Patriots play offense the last 2 years, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's you have to take your victories where you can get them. And I'm not talking Pittsburgh on Thursday night in December. Everyone's like, yeah, that was nice, but did it cost us a quarterback? Yeah. I'm talking about just simple joy of completed passes downfield and receivers who make you excited. And it's going to be a fun training camp. This probably won't be a fun season marked by wins and losses. But as far as the growth, the flashes for what has been just such a limited, I called him, a pocket-bound point guard without a shot, right? That was Mac Jones.
Yep.
Drake May is taking step-back fadeaways, and Joe Milton just wants to shoot from half court. And I'm here for all of it.
And you draft two receivers that have no problem going up, getting those fade routes, but they'll do it with one hand with style. And it's like, and like you said, they're going to be running their mouth about it, like showing you what they can do. It's trying to impress people, showing people that they made a mistake by not taking them. But these guys, they look like they're football players. Now, will it like you said, will it translate to 10 wins? I don't know. Time will tell. But at least there's some excitement. Like you said, we saw a completion of a slant pass over the middle, and it was like high fives and claps. Like, oh, there's one. Now the bar will be set a little higher and plus new offensive coordinators and stuff like that. So the play calling is going to look different. The formations are going to look different. And it's just going to have a different feel to it for a Patriots offense, something that we haven't really seen in 4 or 5 years now. So I think it's going to be real exciting, and people should be turning out in massive crowds to see training camp this year.
Yeah, I think it'll be the most fun camp in summer. And again, people who are listening to this going, that doesn't matter. I want to see it week 1. I want to see it in September. Fair. What I will also say, though, is this energy, this contagious positivity, this freshness, this newness is going to be felt not most on the hill with me sweating my ass off. It's going to be in the locker room, right? Like the energy you talked about, Kendrick Bourne to Pop Douglas going into year 2, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, Drake May, obviously. Like this is new life and energy for the team. I think you will see that in a way that because of the fractured relationships, coach-quarterback, just Belichick's overall program, which again worked for years, Hall of Famer, best coach ever.
Yep.
I don't need to say that anymore, but just kind of dragged the team down a little bit. I'm not saying Drake May getting along with Alex Van Pelt is putting points on the board, but it's just going to have, as the kids would say, vibes, better vibes in the building. So if you don't care about how I feel, just watch and listen and hear how they're talking this summer and this season. I think it's going to be good energy.
Yeah, and real thing I'd add to that quickly, the return of Judon and Gonzalez, I think, is a key thing that's getting kind of overlooked. But imagine the first day of training camp when they're out there with pads on and you see the one-on-one drills and it's Polk and Gonzalez going back and forth. That's, to me, is an exciting thing to see. Everybody's going to be on their feet to watch Gonzalez, your young DB, against your young receiver going at it every day at training camp. Well, him and Polk, not Baker, excuse me, Baker and Gonzalez. The trash talk back and forth and the one-on-one with that's going to be exciting, and that's going to make the coaches kind of look around like, okay, we got irons sharpening irons here, and it's a good foundation to have when you're rebuilding a team. So I got to give them credit for that, and I just can't wait to see it in person. I'm not expecting them to win 12 games, but I'm expecting it to be far more exciting and way more intriguing than what we've seen the last couple of years.
With Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where right now you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks with basketball, hockey, and other sports on Prize Picks. And I'll tell you, look, I like Prize Picks for baseball too. The Red Sox just started up. They're playing the Mariners, the A's. I put a little money down and I got a lot more money back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I did the same. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS at Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100, and you can do the same. Basketball, hockey, and baseball. We got a lot to do until the draft, and you can find it all at Prize Picks.
It's funny you mentioned Gonzalez because we talked to him yesterday. I'm recording here Wednesday morning. It's gray, it's rainy, it's somehow May in New England. It was the first time he spoke to us since last year, since before the injury, and he spoke as if he thought Bill was still the head coach because he wouldn't give details on anything injury related, which is fine. We know to keep it general. Or do you think you'll practice in OTAs? I'm not looking for a guarantee. Like, are you cleared yet? How's the shoulder? He said he was healthy, but I looked up not only just his age. He's only 2 months older than Drake May. So let's say May hits, Gonzalez hits, Barmore. You've got 3 cornerstones under 25 right there. Throw in Polk or Javon Baker if you're feeling optimistic. If not, here's my second point, is that he played against Polk in college, and Polk went for 3 catches and 91 yards. And I asked him about that play. It was the post route against cover 4. First of all, he made clear it was not his fault. But it's just to say that, like, the guys that they brought in, yes, we don't know about Jalen Polk, have had success against NFL defenses. That Oregon defense had a lot of NFL defenders on it. Even though we haven't seen them at this level. And so he's got a lot of respect for Polk. The guy goes back to Texas, and just little tidbits here and there, because it was good to hear from Christian Gonzalez, even if he didn't really want to talk to us too much. So he did say he was, quote, a little sick that the rookies this year won't have to wear numbers in the 50s and 60s. I'm not sick. I'm very glad for that.
It's time to move on from all the old ways. I mean, even the good and bad. It's just time to start new and fresh and something different. A different look, a different vibe. Like I said, not expecting him to go out and win five, 6 Super Bowls, but it's time to move on from the old. And I think Brady's roast was the opposite, the exact ending we needed to everything old with the Patriots. They clowned each other and got it all out the way, and now we can move on to something new.
Yeah, I have to keep focused. I would love to talk Brady roast. My first tweet was like, I can't quote any of this. Not that I felt obligated to, but you're participating in it. And then, of course, I said a couple quotes out there. So those were the highlights to me, or thoughts are on X or whatever. Okay, really quickly, you have 4 best moves. I have 4 best moves. You have the Patriots 3 worst moves to the offseason. I expect there to be some overlap. I've already hinted that Drake May will come up in this conversation. So for the best move, your top out of these 4 that they made this entire offseason really quickly was what?
Quarterback. Getting Drake May. That's my number one. Getting Drake May, because everything revolves around the quarterback. If the quarterback's not right, none of it's right. None of it's going to matter. They've made sure that it's a QB league, and everything, success is all determined about that QB. They went and got them a quarterback. They got their guy. You know, it wasn't the guy I wanted initially, but it's all good. But they got their guy, they got their quarterback, and they started building around him. So getting Drake May was my number one offseason move that my number one on my list for the best offseason moves.
So, in another thing that will not put any points on the board, but because it's May, and these are the things that we talk about, what's your impression been of May when he's met the media here so far? A couple of interviews here and there.
He sounds like he's nervous. First of all, he sounds like he's real nervous, talking real fast. I mean, he is a country kid, so he's gonna kind of talk fast like that, real excited. But I think he's genuinely enthusiastic to be a Patriots quarterback. I mean, the whole idea of, is he happy to be here? Does he want to be in the North? All this other stuff. I think the dude's real excited about being an NFL quarterback, and he's happy to be, to be a Patriot. I'm pretty sure they're embracing it. They were impressed by having the one-on-one meetings with him and the interviews, whatever. So, I mean, I think people up in New England are going to have to adjust to him, but to me, he sounds like every other player in the South when they do interviews. But it's going to be an adjustment. But I think he's more, how can I say, he's more excited than what we got from Mac Jones. He's showing you a little more. He seems like a young kid that's just happy to play ball. But one thing I can take from the things he said is he's a baller. He's a gym rat. He likes to play football. Football is all that matters to him. Maybe it's the whole thing with his brothers and being in a house full of athletes, his pops, where competition and playing ball is all that really matters, and everything else gets put to the side. And I genuinely believe that's going to accelerate his growth and his talent in the league, because you could tell he's really about hard work and getting better. So hopefully that doesn't change about him. But I think the fans are going to grow to like Drake May.
Yeah, they haven't already.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the family, because that's something that I came close to dismissing in the whole process, right? Like if you're going to what the house was like when this kid brought up as a reason to believe in him as a prospect, I'm like, you just skipped over, I feel like, 100 things that matter a little bit more. But the way I saw him interact, obviously all the success of his brothers that he's had, the only way to survive in that kind of family is to obviously compete and win and hold your own. And what that has led to, from what I've seen in these media appearances, is just a real sense of self and sense of comfort in your own skin. Something certainly I didn't feel at 21 or know what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it and whether I even could. This kid might bust out, but he at least will go into that locker room with the kind of security that not only just attracts people to you in any line of work or any line of place, but especially for leaders, and in a room of guys who grew up similarly, alphas, or people having to fight for their own playing time on a team or within a family. And so I think those things work in his favor, where it is authentic, it's genuine. But it also gets me thinking of, like, you know how those families, especially like if you own a beach house or if you rented a beach house, you have those signs that hang that are like live, laugh, love. What do you think was on the May family household? It's like, compete, kick some ass. If you lose, take a lap. Like, basically something deeper than that, but what am I missing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with your father being a college quarterback or whatever. I think he played in the Canadian League or something like that. But you got your pops there, you got your older brothers, and you can tell they're ultra competitive. But I mean, the one thing I will say about him, when a comparison to what you had with Mac Jones, when things got tight for Jones, you see him on the sidelines looking like he didn't know how to handle himself mentally, what to do next. Man, how do I get out of this? And you can already tell the minute that May feels that way, he can see his brothers in the back like, dude, if you don't get it together, I'm going to come down there and get you together. Like, you can already tell he's not going to dwell on a negative play too long or a negative quarter or a bad game. And you can see he's going to want to bounce back, get everybody involved. We're still in this. We're good. You know, you can kind of see he has that mentality. And I think that does come from playing with, growing up with a brother who won a national championship on a baseball field, the basketball, pops being a quarterback, just being in that household. He's not going to dwell on down moments too long. And we have seen here in the past that you need a quarterback that can handle those moments playing in the New England area. So I think that's going to be a big, feather in the cap for Drake May going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's pivot. The worst out of your three moves the Patriots made this offseason was what?
This is weird. I might be the only one here not addressing the running back situation. I wanted to see them get a younger running back in the draft. I think they need a horse, and not in the old school guy get 35 carries kind of way, but I do think they need to replace what you lost from Zeke Elliott, maybe a little more than that, because Stevenson's coming off an injury. He's getting a little older. I think they could have went and got a young running back, a burner, I'm going to say a third down guy, but a kind of do it all running back, but somebody with some burst. And I think the way you protect a young quarterback, if you're going to play him early on, I hope they do, but I think you run the football. I think you find a way to not put your young quarterback, putting May in a position where he's throwing it 45 times by running the football. Now, they might address it as time goes on. They might believe in the guys they already have there, but I was really looking for them to address the running back situation. And I would say get a Pro Bowler, but get a really good running back to help out your young quarterback.
So are you out on Antonio Gibson?
No, I think he'd be a good third down back for them. I think it's something they've been missing. And I think that's what Mac Jones had his rookie year. The running back, the production in Mac Jones' first year was crazy. I think they had like 2,500 total yards or something like that. Third down back, I think was Bolden, had like 500 yards of offense that year as a third down guy. And just having a guy to dump the ball off to, if you want to run those screen plays on third down, you have a guy who can legit do it on an elite level. But I think having a third down guy will help your young quarterback out. But I just wanted another guy in the backfield to go along with Stevenson in case he starts to wear down as time goes on.
That did not make my list. So I'm glad we're talking about it. And it's interesting too, right? Because Stevenson's in a contract year. And we have all of these extensions coming up. Barmore gets a big bag. Duggar resigns, Onwenu resigns. And you're looking around going, okay, who's next? And Stevenson's eligible, right? All those 2021 draft picks. I don't think it's good business to re-sign running backs to big money, particularly in second contracts. You have to be an outlier in a way that, as good as I think Stevenson is, just hasn't proven to be that way. Not to mention the workload the Patriots have foisted upon his shoulders these last 2 seasons, which will accelerate a decline, which might be years away, but you just don't know until it happens. And so I, like you, am in on Antonio Gibson and wrote up a scouting report on him for the Herald a couple of months ago. Soon after he signed, ran it by someone within the league who was like, okay, this makes sense. It's a little wordy, trim this, but just really underscore the fumbling part, because that's where everything breaks. If you can't trust the guy to hold on to the ball, he's not going to see the field. And I could talk about how he's a rare power pass catching back, right? You can trust him between the tackles. He's an excellent pass protector, according to PFF or any stats you want to find. Yeah. He's a good one-cut zone running back. This is going to be a zone running scheme. But if he busts, then it's Stevenson and Kevin Harris. And so I'm with you. I think it would have made my list had we gone to 5 or 6. But it's a fair point because, whether it's injuries or the fumbling issues, this is something that could crop up a lot faster than I think people anticipate.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be important. I mean, look at the coaching staff, the guys they brought in from Cleveland. We all seen what the Browns have been doing the last few years. They run the football. That's what they do. They run the football and to protect all 10 quarterbacks they used the last 2 years. But they still with 11 games or something like that last year, but they ran the football. They kept bringing in veteran running backs, and it kind of protected Flacco through last season and the other 3 quarterbacks that played. So I expected them coming in to be more of a run-heavy offense than what we've seen in the past, especially with a young quarterback and young receivers. You want to run to your strengths. Okay, we can run the football. We got decent tight ends. Okay, we'll play that way and play off play action through that. But I was expecting them, put it like this, to go out and get one of those young running backs, especially through the draft, when all the good running backs started fading later and later into the draft. I'm like, wait a minute, you can get an All-American here late. But they decided to go with the receivers and shore up their offensive line, which I don't have no issues with that. But I was still waiting and looking for them to somehow, some way land a running back. Now, some kid can pop in training camp, some guy they bring in, but I was expecting them to get a running back out of this. And that was my biggest disappointment with this Patriots team in this offseason.
Okay, your second favorite move, the second best thing the Patriots did this offseason was what?
Bringing Onwenu back. Offensive line. Yeah. We saw the importance of the offensive line or lack thereof, last year or so. So I think retaining him, keeping him in the building, and good for him for wanting to stay, and good for them for bringing him back and realizing how important he is. And I'm glad they got that done and got him signed. So I would say bringing Onwenu back is my second biggest offseason move for them.
I think this is obvious, and I agree completely. I mean, you could make an argument this is number one, just if you're against the idea that a quarterback, at the top of the draft guarantees anything, which obviously it doesn't. But, at some point you have to take the swing. They did, because Onwenu was their best player in offense last year. He plays a premium position now that he's a tackle. And it's not, a matter of left versus right anymore, because the guys on the right side are getting paid just as much, because pressure in your face, as it turns out, Cerrone, is just as bad as pressure coming from behind you, and sometimes worse. It might not result in a strip sack as often, but it's going to affect the play, and it's pretty valuable. So Onwenu, whether he's at right tackle or right guard, based on his last comments, doesn't seem, particularly keen on the idea of going to left tackle, which I know we'll get to a little bit later. You just have to keep your best players. Like he's professional. He's in his prime. He plays a premium position. This was simple. And just imagine for a second, because again, the left tackle situation is vastly different. Yeah. Had Onwenu walked and they balked at an extra couple million, and he goes to someone like the Giants, so I know who had interest. What are we saying now? Like, you can't play Drake May. You're not going to run the ball. You don't have any tackles.
You don't have anything. Yeah. It's now you're looking at it as a tank year. You're looking at your situation where you could be this year's Carolina Panthers. Just go from bad to worse. You don't want that. Not around here. Anyway, I mean, folks will end up losing their jobs with the outcry after that. But yeah, that one move, I think, I wouldn't say gave them all hope, but I think once he was re-signed, it kind of opened the door for them to re-sign other guys in the building and guys wanting to stick around. And I think that was a vibe that I don't know if the fans were feeling, but how many of these guys want to stay after Belichick left after last season? Are any of these guys going to re-sign here? And then sure enough, they re-sign him and guys start sticking around. but I think he's important to this offense. I think, like you said, probably the most important guy to this offense right now until they figure out on that left side. But I think keeping him around was huge. It allows you to throw the football, allows you to run the football, and it sends a message to your team that we will take care of our own. If you're good here, you produce here, we're going to pay you, you're going to stick around, and not really throwing a shot at the old regime, but that never really was a guarantee. So I think signing him was a big sign to everybody on many different levels.
And again, just to get ahead of what I think some people would counter, what does it matter that you're sending this message to the locker room? If you're good, we'll keep you. Like, but you might just want to go get a bag elsewhere. That's great. The re-signings of internal free agents is so much higher in terms of the success rate because you know what you have in the player. There's no projection of how is Jonnu Smith going to fit into this offense, or can we get Nelson Aguilar the ball downfield, or what's it going to be like for Jalen Mills if he just doesn't want to play corner anymore? Then we have to move him to safety. And this is to knock any of those guys personally, but it used to be in free agency. You remember these guys would take visits and they would go see multiple teams, and then they would weigh their contract offers, and then they would sign. No. They talk behind closed doors, agents and GMs, Jackson, whomever at the combine. And then they swap contract offers in the days leading up to the legal tampering period. That opens and the deals are done. You don't have time to get familiar to erase some of that uncertainty. And if you know you feel good about a guy, tie goes to the guy you already have. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but I think it speaks to a more sound strategy for players, again, as I've said, play premium positions. I did not name my worst move of the Patriots offseason, but I hinted at it just there. They still, Cerrone, somehow after last season, in 2022, when there was a black hole at right tackle, have an established, proven starter on the left side. And this is crazy to me. Did this make your list?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
It left tackle. I mean, I had it. It wasn't my second one, but yeah, it was his third. I had left tackle on there. They still didn't address it. I mean, they took the kid from Penn State. Can he play left tackle? Time will tell. I don't know. But like you said, they still didn't get an established left tackle. I think that's the move that would have kept a lot of people from giving this team an A in the offseason, A+. If they would have went out and landed a legit left tackle, it changes the way we look at how they're going to handle May, how they're going to run the football, what kind of offense they're going to be. All these things change when you have a stable left tackle on the field, on the team, whatever. But they didn't really address it directly. I don't know if they're going to move guys over or not, but now it opens the door for guys like you to write more articles and do more homework in training camp about how this guy looks at left tackle. They played this guy. They rotated this guy in. This guy's going to play the second preseason game. You're going into week one, so-and-so was named the starter at left tackle, and you're playing that game all over again. So I really wish they would address that and solidify that left tackle spot. Maybe they tried, and this is what they ended up with, but I would have loved to see more effort with that left tackle position.
And I think a name, maybe not this week, because Chris Price, the Boston Globe, friend of the podcast, did an excellent job detailing the malaria case that Calvin Anderson dealt with. And that was a guy before he got sick. Again, 3 days before training camp, go read Chris's story, 105-degree fever. I don't know how high you've gotten in the fever department. I think I topped out at like 102 something as a kid.
Yeah.
105 is near death. Anyway, the point is, he's a guy that last year, with Riley Reef was like, oh, someone will stick, right? Opposite Trent Brown. It didn't happen. Malaria is an outlier, rare case thing that happened again. Certainly won't to Calvin Anderson. I think they're banking on him, Chukwuma Okorafor, or Caden Wallace to stick at that left tackle position. But two of them, Wallace and Okorafor, they're like, yeah, well, he did it in college, and it might have been in practice if he was Caden Wallace, and it might have been 6 years ago if it was Okorafor, but they can do it, and I'm just not there. And I think that's completely fair. And it just reminds me of that exercise we did last year. Throw everyone at the wall, see who sticks at left tackle or right tackle, and you'll just roll. And I don't know, Jonah Williams, who I know they were not really in on, seemed like a perfectly fine solution, even as a stopgap, because he's proven on both sides, goes for 3 for 45 to Arizona. Maybe didn't want to come here. But as far as we heard and it was reported, they were in on Tyron Smith and Michael Wenu. That's kind of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's what's, I wouldn't say going to stink, but if you open up the season first couple weeks and May or Brissett, whoever's back there, is getting blasted from the blind side, it's just going to open up the door for more and more questions of, look, see, you derailed the season by not addressing this position, or even if there's inconsistencies of who's starting this week, who's starting next week, and who took the most snaps in practice. All that stuff is just going to lead for more questions. But I think if I'm bringing in my new young franchise quarterback, if he plays this year or next, one of the first things I'm doing is trying to figure out a way to protect his blind side and keep him upright for the foreseeable future. But maybe they see something, one of these other guys that we don't see, and I hope so. And maybe they believe in their offensive line coaches too. Maybe they believe in these guys to coach some of these guys up better than what they had here in the previous years. Coach these guys up, Scarnecchia style, and get these guys to look better than what was advertised or what was expected.
Okay, so the draft is behind us, but that means the best is still ahead of us. I'm talking playoff games, Celtics, Bruins, and I'll be there covering the Celtics for the Herald. We lost our guy Steve Hewitt, which brings me to my real point. You want to come with? Because you can find Celtics playoff tickets, lowest price guaranteed at Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets easier and faster than ever. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. You can find killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, including those pesky fees, views from your seat, and always, always, always the lowest price guarantee at Game Time, which takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And honestly, I've used Game Time for other games as well. I'm a couple T-stops away from the Sox. If I want to go to a home game, check out on Game Time, wait outside the gates. It starts, prices go down, boom, I'm in the park 5 minutes later with the lowest price guaranteed. So you can do this with the Celtics coming up in the second round. We all know they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then hopefully the finals. And you can be there right with them. Last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, all again, lowest price guarantee, even event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or MLB tickets, all with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today. Create a free account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, the account is free. Download Game Time, create an account, and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. That's Game Time today. Last minute tickets tomorrow, and the lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah, and again, they believe that this can happen because Alex Van Pelt said so, and Scott Peters, their new offensive line coach, said so. Scott Peters, very hands-on coach, played in the league 7-8 years, since been coaching for 4, under Bill Callahan, who after Scarnecchia is your best offensive line coach in the league. It's encouraging, but I will say Peters has been in coaching less than Gerard Mayo has. So, he's not taking the same leap going, from the street to a head coaching job within 5 years. And again, I think Gerard is capable. There's just going to be growing pains like there will be for a lot of his players. Peter's probably also included in that growing pains group. We'll see, because there are other people in the league I talk to, not as high on Caleb Moss. Doesn't make them right. Doesn't make the Patriots wrong. I just would feel better with a surefire, that's our guy answer at left tackle. Or if he gets hurt, okay, we can juggle Okorafor and Wallace and Calvin Anderson. I don't really want to juggle now after the draft. I have 2 positive moves left, 2 best moves. I think you do as well, and you have 1 worst, and then I have 2 to go. So let's start with the positive. One of the third best, fourth best move that the Patriots made this offseason.
Third best positive for me was the receivers, just as a whole, as a unit. I think I like KJ Osborne. I thought that was a good pickup for them. I thought he's a decent player. Some say, well, he's he only looked good because those guys were around him. It's like, well, maybe what if he would have looked better if they weren't there and he had more opportunity? But I thought KJ Osborne was a good pickup for them. And then the receivers, they addressed it in the draft. And it's just going to create competition, like I mentioned, in training camp and getting younger guys in there, getting explosive. I would say explosive. Again, these aren't a bunch of 4.2, 4.3, 40 guys, but they're playmakers, if that makes sense. I mean, they're playmaking type guys, make catches in traffic. They all show the same traits, even Osborne. And I think that this is the kind of team they're going to be. I don't want to say too much downfield, 40, 50-yard bombs, but you're going to see these guys go over the middle, break a tackle here or there, and get, a lot of yards after the catch. Instead of the typical, we're going to throw a 5-yard slant, guy lays down. I think I'm tired of seeing that, and I think everybody else is. We might have the opportunity to finally see one of these guys who can take a slant, make a guy miss, and tear up the sidelines. These are the kind of players they brought in, guys who I think can, even a guy like Polk, I think one thing is getting overlooked about him is he played in Washington, played in the Pacific Northwest. It rains all the time. The weather's always bad. A guy like him in New England, playing New England, Buffalo, in Jersey playing against the Jets, even in Miami sometimes, if it rains or whatever, a guy that can make plays in inclement weather and has shown the ability to do so. So I love what they've done with the receivers, bringing those Osborne again. He played in the NFC North. He played at Chicago. You know what I'm saying? He's played in some of these elements at Green Bay. So bringing in some of these guys to play with May and for the future, I really like the way they address that. Now, will these guys turn to superstars down the road? I don't know, but I think pairing them up with Pop Douglas and Bourne, I think you finally have something there at the receiver position that we can all look forward to.
Cosign, I think, is a great point, and I would add this, to Polk and Osborne too, because you talk about it, they played in Washington, they played in Minnesota, and the weather part I think is underrated, specific to offense, right? But Washington ran a pro style offense relative to what you would see in other college systems. There's a lot of motions, there's a lot of shifts, the route trees, the route combinations that they're using was a lot of eye candy and dress up to get to the same stuff, and it worked. That's NFL offense, man. A lot of the straight drop back passing games that you see across the league are very, very similar. It's just how do you get to those concepts and what do you choose to major in? What the Patriots are going to major in are a lot of play action passing, the zone scheme that we talked about, and working off of that with their boot movement stuff and these shots. You know what kind of offense KJ Osborne played in? That offense with Kevin O'Connell, a lot of Shanahan adjacent stuff. So he'll have familiarity in a way that other receivers wouldn't. It doesn't, again, mean he's going to score more touchdowns. But I like that about Polk and Osborne. There's less of a transition. And, my fourth best thing, just real quick, is just adjacent. You talk about the competition. I like the Patriots cut some dead weight on this roster. Like Devontae Parker and your sourpuss attitude, not taking responsibility after losing the game in Vegas. See ya. Trent Brown talked about playing for an NFC team in the days after they beat the Steelers. I wrote about this in Report and said he's likely not going to come back. He's gone. Some guys in the coaching staff. I don't think there was ever a chance that Joe Judge was going to be kept in this Gerard Mayo staff. And partly because Gerard Mayo has guys that he wants to hire from the outside and bring this new energy. But just guys that when you talk to people in the building didn't contribute to what they're trying to do now. We talk about the vibes. To advance that, to push it forward, I think is smart. Because they are in the business of adding talent, but they're trying to do it in a cohesive way. As we always heard, it's not assembling talent or adding talent, it's building a team. Part of that was cutting your losses. Even if Parker for a while was like, you're going to take a $7 million cap hit just to wave this dude goodbye, and he goes down the road to Philly. But I thought it was smart. They drew some lines in a way that said, if we're going to start over, we're going to do it our way and build a culture as well as a program.
And that goes right to my last positive there, re-signing Barmore, re-signing their guys, just keeping those guys in the locker room. Like you see, now they ride through the locker rooms on bikes. Everybody's talking about good vibes. It can't get any better than what it is now. Right now, everybody's paid, everybody's happy, everybody's high-fiving. Complete contrast compared to last season where you guys were constantly asking questions about guys in their contracts. Who's going to get re-signed? Are you going to be around? Have you talked? I don't know. I mean, you're still going to deal with Judon's thing coming up, in the future, but keeping their own guys, I thought was a huge positive. Keeping their core guys, keeping that defense intact. I think they could be a good defense, a borderline great defense. Keeping those guys in, being a defensive team, you got a defensive head coach. Play defense, keep the score low, gives you a chance to win a lot of ball games in the NFL. But keeping those guys around and keeping the morale good in the locker room, I think was huge for this team this offseason. And it was a pleasant surprise seeing them keep all these guys around and get guys paid.
I'm with you. And this will wrap up my final, best move of the offseason, which was just promote Elliott Wolf. Because, again, you knew the game plan he was going to follow. His dad did it in Green Bay. He told he told the Krafts first in meeting what he was going to do before they handed him the keys and said, this is a 3-month Sunday drive, but I want to see where you go. Which to me, again, is a little bit crazy. You should just give him the keys and say you have the car as well for as long as we're going to allow you. But it was going to re-sign core players. He said this at the combine, invest in weapons through the draft, address offensive tackle, and he did it. So I think promoting Elliott Wolf, who I've said on this podcast, I've written it. I'm a believer. We can go to the blind resume test. I cited at the start of this podcast, 20 years in front offices, been an assistant GM, been in a different system, but also here for 4 years, so knows the ins and outs of your building, the strengths and weaknesses of your roster. It's just a smart move. And so that was the first domino that led to Onwenu-Sting, Duggar, Barmore, which was a great extension. And I think, maybe they get it done down the road. I was happy about it. I just start with him because he's the guy who made the rest of it happen.
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. I didn't have him on my list, but yeah, he's the one that made all this work. He did all this. He made all these moves, and they didn't just say, "Hey, Mayo, you go do it." Mayo said, "No, let this guy do it. He's going to do his thing. We'll work hand in hand. We'll work together." But you can see they let him do it in his vision, the way he thought was best for the team. And I mean, I wouldn't say he hit everything, but I think he did the best like I said, best he could with what he had coming out of the situation they were in. But I honestly, I know this might sound weird and people don't buy into it. I think they're a lot closer to being competitive than people want to give them credit for. I think they want to look at this team and just instantly say they're a 3-win, 4-win team, whatever. And I just don't believe that. I think they're just too good defensively. And I think they might just have enough offensively to where they're not going to be as bad for as long as people think they are. I think they're building a decent foundation, and I think the only way to go from this point now is up. How far up do you go this year? I don't know, but I think it will be trending upwards come December, January with this team.
Print the shirts. Decent foundation, better than you think, at least for a little while.
At least that's it. Yep. No, barring any injuries, but yeah.
Good. All right. I have 2 negatives left, the worst moves of the offseason. You have 1, I think.
Yeah, the one I had left was the left tackle. That was the we talked about that one and addressing that, and I had left tackle, running back. I thought I had one more up here. I'm sorry, I thought we might have missed one, but yeah, left tackle was my big one, my big offseason move that I wish they could have done better, but they might have addressed it. But right now, looking at it, I don't think they have, not in the way we all want them to.
Yeah, my 2. One is obvious, so I'll start there. Just the absence of guys that I've described before that on offense have some gravity to them, right? Playmakers, keeps the defensive coordinator up an extra 30 minutes the night before a game. We need to take care of X. And it doesn't have to be a number 1 receiver. It could have been the running back you were talking about or a tight end. And I think they got the best tight end in the market they could have gotten, Hunter Henry. They signed someone in free agency, KJ Osborne, who's willing to sign with them. And the same goes for Antonio Gibson. And they got 2 receivers in the draft, and that's great. But if I'm scheming against the Patriots this season, I'm going, what am I really afraid of here? It's still a very narrow margin offense, an efficiency offense. They're going to shoot for these big over-the-top plays, but unless Javon Baker pans out immediately or Jalen Polk, looks like he did at Washington right away, I don't really need to protect against the players executing the scheme. It's just understanding, short yardage in midfield. Okay, Alex Van Pelt wants to dial one up here, and that doesn't keep me up because that's just standard offense for people who run it that way. So the lack of players, you can scream about Calvin Ridley. I'm on either side of that. I get it one way or another, but just not being able to fill that Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins, if they were ever available to trade, was a bit of a bummer. So I don't know where you stand on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Missing out on, like you said, not so much just Calvin Ridley, but a Calvin Ridley caliber player. Like you said, somebody who the safeties keep peeking over at him. Just somebody they have to worry about. Now, I mean, do they believe one of these young guys could turn into the next Calvin Ridley or T. Higgins? Possibly. They could have their guy. I mean, one of these guys could be the next Puka Nacua. We don't know that. But the first month of the season, no one's going to be paying any attention to these guys. Not like that. Not in the way to where it opens up the field for everybody else. Now, I think if these guys do, I'm going to say hit at not be Pro Bowl hits, but if these receivers are decent enough along with what they have, I think it does open things up for Pop Douglas and Hunter Henry because you have guys on the outside you might have to worry about. But like you said, if you had a guy that everybody knew, okay, that's T. Higgins, we are worried about him at all times, it would completely open it up for everybody else. Your running game, your tight end, your slot guys. And even if he's not getting the ball, just have him out there as a decoy. It opens things up. And I think they missed out on that for a few $1 million or whatever it is. If they couldn't get the wife to agree to live in New England, whatever it might be, but they missed out on that opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great point. It's the same one that I hammered home around the whole DeAndre Hopkins saga, right? It's not, is DeAndre Hopkins worth this money in a vacuum, in isolation? Yeah. Is your number 1 receiver? He is the number 1 receiver in all 6 states as soon as he lands in New England, and that's the best that you have here. And what he does is put the rest of the depth chart in its proper order. Okay, Kendrick Bourne's a 2 or a 3. Fine, that makes sense. Pop Douglas pops as your number, two, or that's how it was. Smith-Schuster is your number 2. Fine. Kendrick Bourne, number 3. Great.
Yep.
Pop Douglas pops. Great. 3 or 4. It all made sense because everyone had to do more to make up for that absence of a number 1 receiver.
Yep.
They all got extra attention. Nothing opened up, and we all watched the 2023 Patriots play, quote unquote, offense. Okay, my last one is related just to the searches, and we hit on the one going on now at the top. I think ultimately the damage from this is just optics, but the damage is worse because of how things went with the offensive coordinator search. And it might end up, and I might even bet on this, that Alex Van Pelt will pan out in a way that will surprise the Patriots and was better than Nick Caley, who I reported was a finalist, then got a contract offer and rejected that offer because of everything Alex Van Pelt has brought. But the offensive staff they have now, you talk about guys on the field who don't put a scare into a defensive coordinator. I think Van Pelt is very well respected. Ben McAdoo has some track record of working with quarterbacks. Aside from that, these are a lot of cast-offs from places that really weren't keen on keeping these assistants. Maybe they become greater than the sum of their parts. That's the mark of a good coaching staff, I think. We just haven't seen it. And so when you look at that, their inability to really pull some other assistants who interviewed for the defensive coordinator job, and their names escape me. Michael Hodges, I want to say, was the linebackers coach from the Saints. Defensive backs coach, last name might have been Simmons. Christian, I'm just blowing it, from the Broncos, who doesn't go there, goes to Philly instead. What it showed was the Patriots are either not offering enough money or it's really unattractive from their experience in these interviews. And other people around the league talk. They take notice. And so that ultimately leads to either they could have handled the process better, and I know coaches who interviewed with them were not blown away. They just thought it was a very regular whatever experience, or they were not offered enough money. And so that perception is something the Patriots are already fighting against. The glory days are gone. Brady's gone. Belichick's gone. Now I have to come in and sell you on why to hire me. No, you should want me. And they just, whether it was the offensive assistants, the defensive assistants, I think the coordinator core is fine. It's stupid that they're doing this dog and pony show, but altogether, you know what I mean? Just not great for ownership and by extension, the rest of the organization.
Yeah. And I think they're in a position now where in everything they do, free agency, coaches searches, front office searches, everybody's kind of in a wait and see mode with them right now. I don't know what to expect out of New England. It's different. We haven't seen anything like this with this team since the 90s. So I think it's everybody's like, you know what? I'm not willing to go all in on this. I'd rather go to Atlanta. I'd rather go wherever. And, little more, even if these teams are bad, they're more established. I'd rather go there than deal with the unknown here and the possibility of me losing my job again next year. So it's, you know what? You guys didn't do a good job of selling me on coming to New England. I'm just going to go ahead and fall back. And other people, like you said, they're all talking to each other like, man, I don't know if I would go up there right now. I think I'd wait and see. Now, if they end up having a turnaround similar to what the Texans did last year, all of a sudden they're going to be knocking on your door. Hey, you still got those positions open? But it all depends on how the players respond to you this offseason. And the fact that, Mayo and Wolf, I want to say they're new at it, but being in that position of interviewing guys, they just new to the game, and maybe they didn't say the right keywords, or they didn't smooth the right way, or whatever it may be. But hopefully they learn from this offseason and know what they're dealing with once they go into it next year.
Well, and the Texans point, or example, I should say, is such a good point, because what more toxic franchise was Houston? Was there in the
ownership down?
Right? David Culley comes in. Lovie Smith comes in. Not just one-year coaches, lame duck coaches fired immediately, but minority coaches. Nick Caserio is in there. How much power does he have? Oh, we're going to hire DeMeco Ryans. Great. Congrats. Well, all of that gets deodorized by C.J. Stroud hitting and the smaller moves Caserio was making to build around him, specifically the offensive line, and no one cares. No one cares about Jack Easterby and everything he left behind and the mess and the coaches and the firings and the politics. It's all gone because you won and you hit the quarterback, so this could be a quick turnaround, as bad as an offseason it's been for the Crabs.
Yeah, I mean, and same thing happened with the Lions a couple of years ago. Were they a 3-win team or something like that? They've been terrible forever.
That sounds like the Lions, yeah.
Yeah, and next thing you know, they hit on a couple of draft picks, and boom, they're in the NFC Championship game, which they should have won. But it changed. Your culture can change really fast in the NFL. All it takes is a couple hits, and everybody wants a piece of you. You're on national TV more, primetime spots. Now you're a sexy team. But the Patriots now, they have to hope that these young guys they have hit and do something to to change how people view them in the offseason, free agency and coaches or whatever, anybody you're trying to bring in to be employed by the New England Patriots, you got to hope your guys hit and change your perception around the league. It's not like the people think you're going to be terrible. It's just the unknown after Belichick has departed. That's the part that scares everybody.
I think they know the Patriots stink. But you know what? The Patriots also know that. And Mayo, to his credit, is self-aware enough to say the league owners meetings, the league meetings or the owners meetings, pick one, don't do what I just did. They need magnets, is what he called. Guys that, players, free agents want to come and play with that Brady was. If Drake May plays like CJ Stroud, that's the biggest magnet you could ask for.
Yeah.
Two quick things, then we'll get you out of here because you've been more than gracious with your time. There was a mailbag question I got last week from longtime listener, male fan, alumnus Gary Langley, asking about, do you see any extensions coming up now that Barmore's done? Who's the next guy? Who's going to get the bag? Who's Elliott Wolf eyeing from across the street with the binoculars like, let's get a deal done? And I said, I don't see it because in my mind, reading that question, and Barmore's side as an example, I'm looking at, some kind of record-setting contract, multi-year, big bag. Stevenson's not going to get it, I don't think, as a running back. Maybe I'm wrong.
No.
But the idea of an extension that maybe not is significant in terms of total dollars, but in terms of value and where they play as a position, if it's, say, a one-year deal or a two-year extension, that opens up a lot more. I don't think Jabril Peppers is there. I think he might be on the fence for me. But the two names that came to mind were Matt Judon, for obvious reasons, last year's deal, $7 million base salary, and David Andrews, who's in the last year of his deal, I think without any guaranteed money. Can you think of anybody else, or do you disagree with the Andrews and Judon picks?
I think I definitely agree with Andrews. Judon is a weird one because it's like you don't want to – I think he can get the bag, but terms of years, I think would be the question for him. How long would you pay a guy like that? Coming off injury, where his arm just disintegrated. But paying a guy like him long term, I think is going to be the question is how many years. But I can see him getting a big contract, mainly because his head coach is a defensive guy. And I think he understands the importance of when he has an edge rusher out there. What's the Patriots record look like this past season if Judon is on the field against the Giants, against the Colts, against Washington, those bad teams that they just couldn't beat. If Judon's out there, I don't think Minshew he makes the couple plays that he made. You know what I'm saying? Little things like that. So I think Mayo understands his importance and I think he's going to offer him the bag. Now, how many years? That I don't know. But I can't see anybody outside of him and Andrews. I think Andrews, with a young rookie quarterback, I think he's the most important guy in that offense right about now. But I can't see anybody else that's up for a long term. I think the rest of them, it's a show me situation as well. All right, which one of you guys now worthy to be the next face of the team? Who we putting on the season tickets along with Drake May? Who's going to be the next guy up? And I think now it's a wait and see. And this year, it's somebody has to pop in order to get that bag. But right now, it's Judon on defensive side and Andrews on the offense.
Forget the season tickets. How about just in the Amazon TV promo? So it's not the head coach. Or just a player, a face America can recognize that's not wearing a headset.
Rod Mayo versus the Jets this week.
Yeah. Gotta help us. And I'm with you. I don't think it'll be a bag, but there is something to say, hey, you want to build a culture. You want to keep your defense. You want to have buy-in from your top veterans. Resign Matt Judon. That does all of that, not to mention keep your best player here. And I think his game will age well, right? He's not one of these quick twitch guys off of the edge. Very technically sound, powered player, works well within all of their stunts and twists, and just has a real knack for that kind of timing. And so, you want to keep players like that, but it's going to be the number. The thing I would say for people just going, well, you have the money, you have the cap space. They do. Let's also note they were top 5, top 6 right now in free agent cash spending. So they did spend big this offseason. Is that use your leverage, right? Like I was saying, pay Kendrick Bourne. You've got to bring him back. What do you have if not for a wide receiver? You don't want to be in a position where you just go to the negotiating table saying we have to get something done, which effectively sends a blank check. If Matt Judon wants something, that's outrageous. And I don't know that he does. You just have to keep in mind that the Patriots, and they did this offseason, spent with this.
Okay, last thing. What's an under-discussed storyline from the offseason? We could be either looking back or we're looking forward. You're just reading things, Twitter, buy stuff, any other things. You're on the radio, and you're saying we should be talking about this more as it relates to the Patriots.
I'm sticking with my disappointments, man. Running back. I think you got to run the football. I think we've seen enough of that in the playoffs. I mean, the Chiefs would have been said over and done with if teams would have just ran the football. I think the teams that ran the football were the most dominant teams in the league. I mean, as good as the Niners were, they went as far as McCaffrey. When they went away from McCaffrey, that was all she wrote. I think you got to run the football. The Ravens ran the football. The Kansas City, when things got tight, they ran the football. I think you have to be able to run the football and protect your young quarterback. And I think the running back position, it's getting kind of diminished around the league. But I think when it comes to the Patriots, I think more discussion should have been on the ground game and this team's ability to run the football. And I think that'll open so much for this team. But I think it's not getting discussed enough.
Fair enough. All right, next week, running back breakdown. Cerrone Battle will be back here in Pat's Interference to do it all here. And you know, in all seriousness, I'm with you to a point. I think, again, to the effect that it supports the young quarterback, insulates him from having to do too much, insulates you as a GM or de facto GM, whatever Elliott Wolf's probable title is going to be moving forward, from injury to Stevenson or Gibson that isn't just Kevin Harris, who maybe they like. Maybe will prove me wrong. That's why that would have helped. Like, I think, again, the offensive line is going to be largely responsible for whether you can run the ball or not. And that, again, is why I also partly wanted a left tackle that they're just hoping pops up sometime between now and September. All right, he has been Cerrone Battle. You can listen to him on 98.5 The Sports Hub. You can see him on NBC Sports Boston. I hope I see you soon, because we always have fun, regardless whoever the third amigo is when we're doing segments. And it's been a while, and you were a pleasure to have here on the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And man, get yourself ready for training camp, man. It's going to be fun. Get you a spot on the hill, because everybody's going to show up this year.
Yeah, we got to get you a Joe Milton jersey, too, or something. Like.
Hey, man, I'll rock it every day, man. But thanks, man. It's been fun, and I really appreciate it.
You got it.